All right, welcome back, Dave, founder of Vog Therapy, to the second episode of this Game Tea Talk, this exclusive Game Tea Talk interview. How you doing? Okay.
Yeah, I'm building a set of stairs going straight down. I'm getting there.
I'm going to be building my own palace, and then when I'm done, I'm going to come see yours, and we'll chat that in the next video. But let's jump into it. Obviously, the reason I've brought you on the channel is I think you have some experiences which you can probably share with us, and I definitely know I've got some. So let's get straight into it. So Dave, have you had any experiences with mental health? It's kind of rhetorical because I know you have, but are there any in particular which have affected your life profoundly, negatively, deeply, and maybe let's start off of when did you first feel that maybe you had some sort of mental health problem?
That's a really good question. Well, to get to that, the end result is probably, again, I keep saying to a lot of people, I'm a hard and complex case, and to come to that conclusion, I guess started when I left home. When I was basically asked to leave home. I was being about 15 years old. Before that, I'd already been in foster homes and passed around in that, but I never really questioned it until I was specifically told that I couldn't live at home anymore, because I'd sort of bounced back. I guess that's when I was specifically told that I couldn't return home, I kind of questioned what was wrong with me, you know. So that's to answer that question.
And did you? I mean, what did you think at the time? Did you think that would you? Because I mean, if you've been going through what's obviously a really difficult situation, it could be quite situational as well. You know what I mean? But did you feel like there's something on an emotional or personal level that you're like, nah, something's not quite right. I'm different.
Okay, that's a hard one because I come from a religious background, and I kind of, like, being so young when I was brought up into that, taught about morality and stuff like that, having figures to look up to. I actually liked that. I really took to it genuinely, and I guess I questioned that when I was fostered out to a lot of Christian families. I guess I questioned the reason, well, why am I being fostered out? And it made me question what it was that I was being taught, fundamentally, both from the religious aspect and also in school as a child. It's the educational system. Schooling was hard. Kids would look at me, differently. I never had a uniform like everyone else. I was a bit of from single mother family, poor family. I guess, things just didn't add up, and I was thinking, well, wow, this, what can I do? But then there was something in me, innate already in me, that was just try and look at things positively, and I used sport. And I was actually quite a bit of a sporting champion in doing that, so that was on my side. So I was working on my strengths early, in amongst all that adversity, I suppose you'd call it. It was only to a point when the fostering home started. From that point on, I guess I was upset, and that was when my mother had married to a doctor at the time, a GP of all things, and I kind of that's been tough for me on how I relate to doctors. But anyway, my siblings was first sent off, so I saw my brother and my sister being fostered out, and eventually I kind of sort of said, well, look, I want to go be with them. So it was kind of in the beginning my own fault, not my own fault, but I just wanted to be with my brother and sister. But, I guess I had to stand back and question all that. And in the process of, a lot of the schools I went to were authoritarian, like the religious-based type thing. Couldn't read newspapers. There was a lot of rules and regulations that if we did certain things, we'd be alienated. But definitely all then. So things just didn't work out. And as a result of that, I developed a few... as a result of the trauma of certain aspects, I did, and I get a bit lost. Sorry there, Barong.
Right. You're doing great.
Just I guess I did become resistant with. Everyone would say to me, well, you ask too many questions, or I was very resistant, and people didn't like that. The teachers, headmasters, and stuff like that. I got flogged and caned a bit for stupid things that really didn't, I wouldn't have rated as wasn't worth getting flogged over. And some of the parents that I was with, they hit the wooden spoon and belt me with that. That was hard to. And then there's another aspect, and I'll fast forward because it is really intense. I ended up on the streets for a while, and I was a vulnerable child to be, I was taken advantage of in some, in sexual sort of innuendo type circumstances by people who were in positions of trust, youth refuges, and some of them, they were under the care of the church, which later on in life we ended up having to be part of a royal commission which had investigated that and then moved on. Trials. And then prison. I ended up, as a result of just my own stupid actions and reactions type thing. So that all of this was building up over years. And I knew that there was something wrong, but I guess I really was down the rabbit hole or in a big dark space then going from the into my early 17. I guess I was pretty young when a lot of this happened to me, actually. I was about 15 years old when I was 13 years old when I was not wanted anymore and basically virtually out on my own. To the point where the people that were looking after me didn't want me. They just put me in a car and tell me I was going on a holiday just to visit my parents, and then I'd find out later. They'd turn around and say, "Oh, well, what it is, Dave, is that they don't even want you, so you can't go and stay with them because they don't want you." And then, and then it is. It's hardcore when you find out that then my parents don't want me as well. So nobody wanted me. That's when I transitioned to living in the streets. I don't know, hard stuff. But yeah, to overcome that, I eventually met a girl and had a child, and from there I did the best that I could. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. Then I met a second girl, and I've been with her for about 27 years now. So that's worked out all right. Did the best I can do.
Well, just to backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
So, first of all, that sounds like an incredibly rough experience, and I'm glad that you've come through the other end in one piece, even if it's been really hard. Sounds really tough.
My brother committed. He was a passive suicide. A lot of my friends committed suicide, and I just saw a lot of people just dying, killing themselves. And suicidality was a huge part of that.
Forgive my ignorance, but what does actually passive suicide mean? I actually haven't heard the term before.
Yeah, my parents don't like it. I actually say my brother committed suicide, and then they go, no, he didn't. What I mean by that is he knew, like, he had Hep C at the time too. He contracted Hep C through needle use, and that really devastated him because at that time there was no such thing as curing it. They can cure it now. In fact, they were able to cure that within like 18 months after he was found dead. He just gave up and told me when I went to visit him once, he said, look, I'm going to die before you. And that really, it just came out of nowhere. I was silent, I just paused and thought about what he just said. And sadly, I just felt that that was genuine and that was going to be the case. He was into drugs. He was heavily into drugs. I never really got into the drugs. I did go into the drug scene, but I just never took to them. But he did, and I think when he was found in his apartment, face down on the ground and whatnot, and he was dead. I remembered instantly about what he'd said to me and why I believed it, because he'd just given up. He'd given up on life, and that's why he continued to take drugs. He continued to put himself in harm's way all the time. He didn't want to do anything to try and deal with whatever. and you can only live so long doing that as an extreme drug taker, and he did. He died. So he knew that he was going to die. He didn't lift a finger to do anything about it. He'd just given up. He didn't care what anyone would do to him. He became just a doormat and just kept taking the drugs until eventually a combination of the drugs that he took killed him. So it's more to do with knowing that you're going to die but not doing anything. Just it's bringing it on, having a death wish, literally having a death wish, so that when you die and you know the dynamics of that person's situation, well, you can virtually say, yeah, that's a passive suicide. They basically allowed themselves to die. They kept taking stuff and permitting themselves to live a lifestyle that was in the end contributing to the outcome of their death. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's how my brother went. And he was drug-induced schizophrenic where in the end, and I don't know, he just...
How old
just
was he
didn't
at the time?
He was 43 at the time. He never got the help. We didn't have this. So in our day, mental health was a huge stigma. In fact, a lot of the time he went up before the courts, he was already guilty just alone on his status, which didn't really help the situation. Yeah,
and you said yourself that that you then realised that you had these issues.
Yep.
And how did they come across? I mean, what issues, if you could put a label on them?
Okay, just that the longer that I kept living the way that I was, I just knew that this. I didn't know at that time about the brain damage, right? For clinical major depression and that over a long period of time, but it would actually literally give you brain damage. But I knew I couldn't keep subjecting myself. If I actually, in terms of religion, sometimes I still even though I've learned to unlearn it, be of the world, be in the world, be of the world or something, or be with evil, become evil, and all that sort of stuff. It just made sense to me. If I kept hanging around, I needed to change my lifestyle. I needed to stop hanging around these people or clinging to the story and, subscribing to the story. I just knew that I'd get away. So I invested my time into my children. And even though I didn't fit the mould of being a respectable person, or my perception of what being a person was, having a job and fitting in and all that, because I had the learning difficulties as well, and I had, which I didn't know at the time, like Asperger's and whatnot, and attention deficit disorder. None of that was turned into my day neither, but I suffered a lot with that, which is okay. It's not a problem. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. In fact, more problem with me was all the religious and all the guilt and shame projection of society, and that's probably what's more screwed me up than anything. But again, my children, just doing what I could with my children. I love kids, man. I just did the best I could to ensure that my children knew that they were loved, and didn't matter who they were or what their abilities were, that they would be accepted. And in the process of doing that and providing the best that I could, I got positive. And I couldn't work in mainstream society, but I could do voluntary work. I opened up a computer shop for one of the op shops, which was quite successful. I had work for the dole participants. It's like I could never get a job, but I was able to help within the system from that point. And as long as I discovered that as long as I could do things within my own realm, but I was quite I had some special. I could contribute. I could contribute in a way that felt like something, and that helped me focus on doing something positive. And that's carried on through the rest of my life, and I've gone up and down, which is part and parcel of who I am. I've got many labels, like the social phobia, depression, anxiety, or major depression, agoraphobia. But recently, I'm currently undergoing an adult diagnosis for ASD, autistic spectral disorders, which can be just a range of different things. And that's a positive thing, because it's going to enable people to view me to understand my processing abilities, rather than just the stigma of the labels that usually tend to come with being judged on how much medication I take. In fact, a bit different with that. I've tried medication and it didn't really work out for me. But having said that, I don't want people to think that that there's anything wrong. Medication is a very serious thing, can be helpful, a beneficial thing for people. It's just how you take it. And in my situation, I think I'll just take it for major episodes, sort of thing, if that happens. Thankfully,
this medication was for depressive episodes.
I had medication for depression, and I also had medication for extreme anxiety. I've been bipolar tendencies. So what they gave me was an psychotropic, which is known as Seroquel. People take it for sleeping, which is actually, which is quite sad. It's a heavy drug for me. Some people, I'm very sensitive to drugs too, and it may have something to do with my chemical makeup and my past drug abuse. Don't know. But just, it's a physiology thing too. Quite sensitive to it. People with ASD actually can be held back by taking certain medications that can dumb them down even, that came out the wrong way. The senses, it's hard to say, because my grandson, he's thankfully we're onto that and we're helping him now by getting an early diagnosis, so he can be understood. But the medications type of thing, if we were to give medications, actually, I'm lost. I just dug myself a hole. I don't know how to explain that, but it can be detrimental in certain circumstances. It's good to avoid medication when you can for certain conditions. That's all. I don't know.
I thought you dug yourself a hole literally and metaphorically.
It's a hot topic. Oh, okay, yeah, this hole.
I'll come back when finished. We'll finish. That's cool. Interesting. So,
I'm active in my recovery now. I do attend groups and stuff like that, but I'm having a break from that at the moment because I actually do it quite often. Space to myself at the moment.
Well, it's pretty interesting to see how it seems. I mean, you to an extent, you said it started turning around when you met your first partner.
Yeah, when I met my first partner, but unfortunately I didn't fit into their realm. She was my partner, I should say, her demographic was a lot different. They're from a very, very small country town where there's scope for, I don't know, how would you say it? I just had a lot more experience than what she did, and we had different core beliefs, I'd say, at that time. And we just clashed, and it just didn't fit in. The way I wanted to live and bring up my children was not the way that they wanted to do it.
But you seem to have sort of, from what I'm from what I'm getting, do tell me if I'm wrong, act on these issues quite quickly.
I guess so.
From that?
That's fair enough. Yeah,
that would be probably all these countless groups and stuff like that. So sort of the positive sort of drive which you seem to have gotten from your first relationship and the next one, even though it didn't work out necessarily. Interesting. What made you keep going when things were particularly tough and really, really hard, and with all the stuff with your brother as well? What kept you the drive to be like, no, I'm gonna change this around. I'm gonna find a way to deal with this. And there's like with the when I was disillusioned with the whole thing of learning about the reality of school and and the loss of losing my faith in that. But there were elements that I subscribed to that actually, I guess believing in myself and moving on. I guess, it's a hard one. That's something that's inherent, I believe. I really do, because I have a bit of a spiritual sense about me these days, and that's actually helped me quite a lot. And I've got that from self-help, reading on the internet. When I got into the internet, that opened a few things up, and I tried a few self-help books, and I just naturally gravitate to tools that are out there to help us, and the concepts. If there's something in the concept that sounds good, I'll gravitate to it, but I don't necessarily subscribe to having it to be, the only way. And just live. I don't know. It's hard to answer that question, but just knowing that, moving on. Okay, I was a jackaroo, or one of the
one of my benefits of being able to move and survive as a child, living on the side of the road in the gutter, was the fact that I was able to keep moving, literally keep moving. I moved from one town to the next town if some stuff didn't work out. Like, I know that staying in certain dangerous situations, I mean, I'm not going to stay there just because it looks popular. Like, I'm going to hang around these kids because I seem to know more of them streetwise, and I'm dressing cool, and they can't do that because they're bound by their by their way of life. It just didn't make sense to keep putting myself at risk. So I don't know. That's why I just move on to the next town, and then I'd find new people, and new friends, and then make friends. That's how I did. I kept talking. There wasn't a sociability in me that I felt the need to reach out and just use my social skills. That was probably a big factor of being able to talk and communicate at that particular time. This would slow down more as I was exposed to that trauma and end up in those situations where I was abused. Slowly that spirit in me would be broken, but yet there's just a thread, enough of the light to hang on for me to keep going, because I knew that it was, if I grab that and just go with that little spark, it'll take me to the next thing. And it's always been so effective that no matter how much I get beaten down by life, walking, for instance, I know that if I get out the door and I just walk, that, I'm going to be all right. It's just inherent. It's inherent. It's just a recognition of knowing that, just get up, keep going. And it's not to do with being strong, although resilience is a better word. I don't like strong. Resilient, it's just trying to be resilient. Nature, just appreciating nature, appreciating whatever I guess having nothing has never been an issue with me because it's lightened my pack. People say, is that all you got on your back, mate? Don't you have anything else? But, there was a sense of freedom that came with that you just couldn't get. When you have all that stuff tied down.
That is a really interesting positive twist, which I completely get to an extent, even just from a banal point of view where we have so much, but there's still, everyone feels like they still don't have enough.
It nails it, I guess.
And okay, let me ask you then about the Asperger's. So when did you discover that you had it? Was that later into the sort of?
Okay, the first sign of it was, and I was never told this until I was an adult, but as a child, dyslexia was probably in my time in the 70s, late 70s, I'd say, well, mid 70s. Dyslexia for reading. I struggled reading the lines. I'd skip the lines, and people, when they asked me questions, I could never understand a question at school. When I was processing the question and I could never get past the question, and that got hung up. The other thing was getting hung up when I was doing a bit of trying to solve the puzzle. Just basic stuff like that was very hard. But yet, ironically, once I got it and I was given the space and the time to take it on, I actually aced the results. And funnily enough, there was a religious school called Academy Christian, ACE or something. They used to put American flags or something at the cubicles. They had something called a PACE system, self-PACE system, which enabled me, despite my learning disabilities, learning disabilities, that what they call it. I was intelligent, so the intelligence was fine. I had great capacity for intelligence, or I did then. Asperger's, my ability to process information. So it's always been there. The world having a unique way of looking at things visually. Sounds, being sensitive to sounds and whatnot, or overly sensitive, but I don't know. So when did I find out? When my son was my youngest boy ended up in the counsellor's office to do with Asperger's, and then they brought me in to have a discussion with me, and then they just, you get that thing like, I thought I might just point out, I think you've got some elements of Asperger's. And I was about 36, or something about 35 then. And then I started investigating it, and the more I investigated, I was like, wow, this, does it? But trying not to be careful to self-diagnose and play the part just because I'm reading it, which I feel happens a lot these days. But quite incidentally, I was excited to discover that, it's all right. I am normal, even though I just have a different way of looking at the world and taking information in. So that's that story.
And again,
it's very
like a really positive ending to it. Discovering your creativity, discovering your intelligence. Brightest lights, brightest lights cast the longest shadows, as I think the quote I'm looking for.
It's well said.
Go away, crab. There's a crab that's entered my base. You're not welcome here. He's after me. I have to draw blood. All right, I've got one more question for you, because I wish we could go on forever and ever with such a long history.
Yeah,
it wouldn't honestly do it justice as well. But is there anything that you're struggling with at the moment? Is there anything that's still plagues you and you think, no, this I need to work on more, or something that you're like, this is just how it's going to be for a while?
Yeah, it's acceptance of where I've been and where I've come from, and I have and there is a sense of recovery, and there's a sense of recovery from the abuse that I've suffered at the hands of an imperfect system. And I don't mean to say imperfect for a cop-out, because imperfect, I believe imperfect's a calling card, and it is an imperfect system, and meaning it's far from perfect. But there's been often I say sometimes when I say in my vlogs, I have to admit there's a bit of brain damage there, and that's but then I look at that, and then I'm also getting older, and no matter what way you look at it, I mean, we're all going to die, and in the process of dying, when you age, you do lose certain intellectual ability, but really that's nothing to be worried about. But it's more of the set pattern of being depressed for such a long period of time can tend for me to have a deep predisposition to falling in negative mind states. So what I try to do is which is why I'm active and try and sometimes go out in social situations with these mental health groups that I have around town, or even join the forum, or meet people like yourself, knowing that that's going to be positive for me, and I need to try and create, not need to, but it would be in my benefit to try and create more positive experiences, not to dwell on where I've come from, and to be able to draw from my story in a way that is detached, that allows me to be able to see positive things in it. So that's important to me. And I'm just, what I do now, mindfulness is a big thing for me, and that's like I talked about the medication thing before. There are certain aspects to my lifestyle now that I value very highly, to do with keeping active within reason, balancing, having a lifestyle that's balanced, knowing that I can have tendencies to be unbalanced, with the eating patterns, again, trying to create positive experiences and learning, just to be accepting of the way the world is, and I don't know, that's doing what I can, man. It's doing what I can.
Yeah.
That's it. So that's
peace with your history, and we'll try.
Yeah. Thanks for putting that into perspective. Yeah. So that to other people that might seem, the happiness trap. I don't know if you've ever read about that, but people's perspective of what happiness is.
I want to there's a book titled that, isn't that right?
Yes, it's to do with acceptance, commitment therapy, ACT. That I was just, the context of why I raise it is, for me to reach such a level at where I'm at now, which is to just work at living from day to day and get through, being hygiene and just being able to go out my door and appreciate the world at its most simplistic level. That's basically my goal, so to speak. And I think that's admirable coming from my background, and I think that's great for other people who are suffering today. And if that's the best that they can do, I think that's not just the best, but I think that's a huge achievement, and it's peaceful. It is peaceful. Happiness is overrated. I think just reaching a state of peacefulness where
so
it's just good to get
that peace,
yeah.
contentment. not happiness,
Make,
whatever that means.
to make friends on a genuine level. It's hard to make friends today. You know, it is. It's hard to make real friendships that last. You know, just being able to meet people on that level. You know, I think that's a bonus.
Well, brilliant. Thanks so much for sharing the story. I know it's a lot.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Audience, whoever's listening, okay? We actually no. I'm going to plug your channel in the next episode for sure. We're going to get into that.
That's okay.
But
that's just.
I definitely learned a lot more than I think I would have learned, and it's impressive just how positive and how sort of. I don't know if yeah, I'm going to say, you know, accepting you are of this awful shit and how you've conquered it. Yeah, and I think conquered the word. Maybe it's not appropriate because I never know if I want to use words like fighting when it comes down to mental health. But how far you've come seems pretty far to me. Anyway. If
I could just say about that channel that I've got, it's just a video journal, and I'm normal like everyone else, and I'm actually quite surprised at the level of placidity or whatever I've felt comfortable with you and telling my story or that part of my story. But in my video journal and that, I do get frustrated from time to time, and you know, it may come across differently, but for the most part, yeah, I just want to throw that out there. You know, like I'm only human too, and sometimes I get frustrated in it.
Mate,
it may come across differently.
Completely, but that's why I'm so happy to have you on though. Is your authenticity, you know, as well. I've been watching a lot of your vids for a couple of months now, and they're good, guys. They're real. They're, you know, they're heart to heart, as well as sort of just being very human, full of sometimes awful editing maybe and other bits and bobs.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, thanks, mate. It's good to know that there's, you know, there might be one or two people reading on that, listening on. That's good. It's the same in AF as well. The anxiety for them.
Well, we're going to call it here then, and we're going to see you guys in a second to hear a bit more about this vid. All right, guys. See you in a bit.
See you guys.